And every time we turn around, it's always going to be going back to real estate. And then I got an aha moment. I was like reading, one of the Wheelbarrow Profit books. Like, hey, we got like one unit is going to be like few $100. So if we get like multiple units, then it's going to be easier, right? Start looking into it. And as we were reading the book, we just realized like this is a business that we actually can do. So we don't have to go far out of the tangent that we already did. And that's how we start jumping into multifamily, though. Start shifting our portfolio from single family and then jumping into multifamily after that.
Awesome. Yeah. So what was your first deal like then with that transition?
It's actually our first deal was actually owning 348 units in Dallas. So yeah, just like a proximity, right? I mean, you and I are in the same mastermind. When I joined that mastermind, I got connected from a network of people. That's how I got introduced when the team acquired that 348 units. I mean, for us, like, it was pretty daunting. Here, like 348 units, it's a first deal. But that's the power of proximity when you work together as a team to take that massive deals. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we often say in multifamily is a team sport, and golly, is it ever a team sport, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of people that they feel daunted by just the fact of buying one house, right? But yet it's relatable. They're like, okay, I understand buying a house because a lot of people buy houses, and I live in a house, so I can understand it. But buying an apartment building, like when I lived in apartment buildings, it never clicked in my head that, wow, somebody owns this apartment building, right? When I lived in a house, I talked to the owner, like it made sense. When I lived in an apartment building, I just talked to somebody who had me fill out an application, and then I moved in, So like it just was never one of those things that clicked in my head, like, wow, somebody actually owns these. It wasn't until, just like you, I started listening to a lot of those things and listening to Jake and Gino, and that I was like, wow, that guy's one of those guys that owns those apartment buildings that I lived in, like I didn't know this was possible. So it's like, what a mind altering thing, right? Because my first deal was a 62 unit, and most people are like, what? But I had never even bought a single family house as a investment property. So, but no, that's awesome. So, what kind of work did it take convincing your wife to jump into 348 units?
It's actually, she was never interested in real estate, though, to be honest, though. She was just like, hey, I trust you. As long as we're not losing money, then I'm happy, right? So, and then when she could probably just get tired and then of doing that, operating a restaurant on weekends, she got to burn out. One thing I asked her, like, hey, I want you to read this book, Wheelbarrow Profit book by Jake and Gino. Read it. To my surprise, she read it over the weekend, and then maybe just like that clicked just because of Gino used to be a chef at a restaurant, and that clicking to her. Just the Monday morning, I remember that she just told me like, "I like the idea. Let's do it." I said, "Like what? What happened?" Like I'm ready. Like let's do it. Like what do you want me to do? Like like are you serious? Like let's sign up. And let's join Jake and Gino and go from there.
That's awesome.
And so since then, she's actually, I asked her to quit her restaurant business, and then she became an asset manager. So we got a few JV deals also under our belts right now since she's asset managing those deals. So that's pretty much, that's been less convincing just reading a book over a weekend. That's what happened.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, it was, I think that if I were to guess, though, that probably stems also from the fact that you guys had a trusting relationship already, and you guys had good communication, because that's something you mentioned, like she's always kind of trusted you in doing that. So how much would you say that it was the book, and how much would you say that like you guys have, let me rephrase this question, because that could go, like I might be leading that question. So how have your guys' communication skills been over the years, and how have you helped them evolve? We've already talked a little bit about that, but the communication between you and your wife over the last 25 years, how has that evolved, and where would you say that has failed miserably for you, and where has it gotten a lot better for you?
It's obviously it's growing because, I've been knowing her like almost 3 decades now, actually more than 3 decades now, right? Because I'm knowing her since high school, pretty much. Like I told you before, like I probably, spend more time with my wife more than my parents because I'm coming as a foreign student over here in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So it evolved. We create a role of engagement, right? And we know that every time we there's a trust that we keep building, and the trust growing stronger over time. At least from with my perspective, even that, hey, I'm traveling, I'm on the roads, as a consultant, that's what I do. There's going to be some level of trust needed, because not knowing where your spouse is going to be, a majority of the week. So there's going to be some level of communication that need to be established, and trust come with it. So I used to always my habit also when I travel, I always tell, hey, I'm already arrived. I'm checking in with my wife and my son. I know, especially if I'm in the East Coast, I'm going to be 3 hours ahead. If I don't have any conflicting, I always make it a habit, like if my wife driving my son to school, that's where I usually call them and check up on them, like how things going, praying for over my sons, and then throughout the day when I lunch break, I usually try to call my wife, just like, hey, what's happening? How's things going? And then check in again in the evening. So make it like a habitual check-in, not try to check in, it's like communication, like, how things going, anything will happen, anything that want to talk about. That habit or culture or value or whatever you want to say, it's become embedded in our daily life.
Awesome. How did that, you transitioned from IBM at one point to Salesforce, or was there unless there was something in between, but how did the conversations go with those transitions? Because it sounds like the communication was always pretty solid, traveling a lot, having that. But how was the talk from the transition from IBM to Salesforce, or whatever came after IBM?
Yeah, so I'm not working for Salesforce. I implement Salesforce, but the company that I work for essentially have a local business model, so I don't require me to travel anymore. So obviously, it's just like it's great leap, knowing that I've been wanting to do that. Still love what I do. It's in consultant fields. We don't have the benefit of the traveling again. It's just a luxury. So, and given that my sons are going to be part of the adolescence age, where I want to be more present and helping out. So that's an easy choice. When I say, like, I'm going to be leaving IBM. I know it's a bigger company, but I'm going to be working in a local consulting company, but I'm going to be more active on the day-to-day and presence here, as in the family.
Okay. Which I'm assuming your wife was all about, being, having you home a little more and being a little bit more active in the family. So
correct. Yes. Yeah. That way then they're going to be able to tag team, right? Like, for example, like if there's a day there's going to be in the meetings, like I'm the one that will be, hey, can you drop our sons to school or pick him up or thing like that? So it become like a tag team rather than like a single parent majority of the week for her in this case. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like then that the communication side had been built up for quite a while, so that when it came time to say, hey, I want to buy 348 units, it wasn't like, are you nuts? Like, no, like we already have this trust. We already know each other. We already understand, how we're thinking. We already have the communication. If this is what he wants, then I trust the route that he's going. Does that sound accurate, or am I inflating it?
That's pretty accurate. I think it's more like for this belief is coming from us, like between us, because we are the first time we're going to buying it. Like, wait a minute, are we? This is too soon, too big, or what if, right? What if? But we just basically we obviously with our coach, we talk about it. Sounds like pretty solid deals, and then we decided to move forward there. At least both of us already convinced enough from our coach and talking with each other that this is a good. The good direction we want to go. That's
awesome. Yeah, we. I think that you mentioned the power of proximity earlier in the conversation, and I think that makes a huge difference in both. My wife and I didn't quite understand it. We've been, both of us, kind of like we are our group for the most part. We travel around the world all over the place with the military and doing all this stuff. So it was like it's just her and I, right? Her and I against the world type of stuff, right? And then once I got into like the Woodborough Prophets community with Jacob Gino and everything, it was we actually flew out to Florida to sit down and have lunch with Gino, because we wanted to like actually know that these people are real. Like, sure, I listen to you guys on a podcast. Sure, you guys tell me you've read, you've wrote books and that you've done these, but I need to sit down with this person. I need to like know who they are, right? So my wife and I, and at the time we only had one kid, but he was, very little, basically a baby. We fly out to Florida, sit down, have lunch with him, and then it changed my world after that, right? Because it was like, well, now I'm around these people that do this, right? That know what it's like, what it means to, buy apartment buildings. So now I can communicate with them, understand what they're saying, understand their thoughts. Raquel started to really understand why it was that we, we're getting involved in these things. And now I'm in other masterminds that are like the same thing, just larger business masterminds that are just like, man, this is like life changing.